So I'm going to talk here about Copylight. And Copylight is a jQuery plugin that I made, which you can include in a web page. And then on various document elements, you can put a CSS class indicating the license that that element's content is governed by. And when a substantial selection within that element is made, the user will receive an alert as well as a possible watermark or change in style of that content to tell them more about the licensing. And the alert will be a red light if it's an all rights reserved license, a yellow light if it's a some rights reserved license and it includes behaviors for all of the Creative Commons licenses, and a green light if it's a public domain dedication. It's an experimental plugin. It's not something that's been well tested, but it's done enough to make the demo, and I wanted to share the idea. And here's a page I've made, which is just one of the test pages that comes in the project. One of every license that's included in the box. So here let's look, for instance, at CC BY, the Creative Commons Attributions license. And the behavior is that when you make a selection that's not super substantial like that, nothing happens. It only triggers when you select a substantial amount of content. And here you can see the little icon of a person in a circle. That is the Creative Commons logo for attribution required. And it's glued a little stoplight with a yellow light onto the end of the selection. So when I click on it, you can put whatever dialogue you want here. I don't want to argue too much or think about what will be in here, but this is where you make your case, your petition to doing anything other than just letting people copy normally. So you could say, hey, please link to this and give them the link. Email this link to a friend could be a button they could offer. A button that lets you automatically click to get the attribution would be a possibility. But the concept is that if you don't want to do that, your selection is retained, not disrupted. You can copy just as normal. I have watermarks for all the Creative Commons licenses, complicated ones like non-commercial, no derivatives, and attribution, still a yellow light, as well as all rights reserved down here, which is going to be a red light and the copyright symbol. And you might ask the question, well, what happens if you select across more than one? And if you do, currently it gives you a stoplight that has multiple states, and the watermarks are applied onto the appropriate things. And if you want to know how easy this is to do, you need a simple modal for that dialogue if you want the dialogue. And there's a JavaScript file for Copylight, and then there's a CSS file for Copylight. And all you have to do after that is go through and put a CSS class on each div representing the license. And so there's CC0, CC BY, CC BY and C, etc. And the plugin will go through, find these, and give the divs the appropriate behavior. You might ask, well, what happens in that case where you have a nested license, where something on the outside has quoted something on the inside that is governed by a different license? So I had to support that case. Here I have a nested license sample that uses Copylight more explicitly using a jQuery selector. So here on this main div, I put a all rights reserved with a 32 character idea of what constitutes substantial. It's quoting from Wikipedia, so there's a wiki down here, and that gets the CC BY share alike. And inside the wiki, we have a quote, which is given CC0. And I also put a background image on the body here of a texture so that we can see how the plugin interacts with that. That turns out to be a very technically irritating problem. So let's go look at a nested license sample. And here we are. So let's say I select some material from the outermost div. You notice that I've only selected material from that, so it gets watermarked with the copyright symbol. And if I only select material from the inside here, you see the Wikipedia license, the attribution share alike, and you notice that it's punched a hole basically. So I can select across all of these, and that hole is still there. And we can see that we have some things selected green, red, and yellow. So doing that turns out to be actually kind of tricky. And you can look at the implementation, and maybe it's not the best implementation, but at least it it works. And I didn't make it for myself, actually. I made it because I got in an argument in 2011 with the people who run Snopes. If you know Snopes, they are this urban legend debunking site. So if you get a forwarded email or there's some kind of rumor you heard when you were a kid, they investigate it and determine if it's true or false or somewhat true. And I got sections for things like Coke and Disney, which have tons of rumors. And I even remember when I was a kid, someone told me that Coca-Cola in Chinese means bite the wax tadpole. And strangely enough, that's somewhat true if you want to read about it. But that wasn't what I was arguing with them about. I was arguing with them because in 2011, was going to copy a sentence or something out of it, and the mouse wasn't responding. I couldn't make a selection, I couldn't right-click, and I wondered if my browser had frozen or something. And it turned out it hadn't. I looked under the hood, and Snopes had actually actively put in JavaScript that broke these functions. So I emailed them an angry email going, have you lost your mind? Why would you do this? And they said, to paraphrase, we're in the business of stopping rumors. We've asked people nicely not to copy our content, but when they do copy our content, they take it out of context, and also we may have an update to new information. We want them to send the link, not to copy from our site. So it was the only response we had. I disagreed with that, and the email trailed off because I went off to implement a better solution. But the central thing that I said is me siding with the Electronic Frontier Foundation and their movement Defective by Design, which points out that digital restrictions management is the practice of imposing technological restrictions that control what users can do with digital media. And this is a problem because sometimes when you're copying things, it's not about copyright violations. In fact, fair use is a protected freedom. You are allowed to excerpt works for critical commentary or review. And they are interfering with that right anytime someone prevents you from taking, say, a screenshot of a movie if you want to say, hey, what's that in that frame, or what Snopes was doing. And in Snopes' case, it's particularly hypocritical because their whole idea came from taking posts off of the internet, like this one, in their entirety, and then adding their own critical commentary to it. But the way that they were thinking to disable the ability to make selections on their website because, it's their website, they can do what they want if it serves them, wouldn't permit the very critical commentary that they were using. We assume they didn't have to retype the urban legends in order to comment on them. So it seemed like a very solid case that they were doing something bad, and they have changed that actually. In response to a petition from change.org here in 2014, Snopes now allows you to copy and paste, although they do something annoying, which is to stick extra information of an attribution link into the material you copy. It's annoying, but it's not as bad. So they're no longer a great poster child for why my idea is better, but anyway, that's the plugin, and I certainly am interested in anyone's feedback. There's a GitHub repository. You can go to the Copylight page and read more about it. And I'll say one thing about it, which is that although people seem to react to this in a way that says, oh, that's great, I don't know how great I think it is. It's sort of dystopian to me of a society that's become over enthusiastic about licensing and lockdown. The good part here being that it's only an alert. It only tells you what the situation is, but it doesn't block you, and it doesn't prevent your selection, and it doesn't pollute your selection. It just warns you and gives you some other options for how to copy. So it's kind of the best case I could think of how to warn people and give them options of what to do with content without breaking the browser. But if there's one talk I think you should go watch, Cory Doctorow, The Coming War on General Computation. This is it's an hour long, but it's very important, and I think that his remark is that the copyright war is like the mini-boss of the future of what it means in terms of how people try to control technology and the implications for that. And so, in a sense, the fact that copyright is so unimportant, he mentions this thing about, when the United Nations calls together experts, they call together experts on important stuff, economics or agriculture. And so how we react to copyright culturally is an important baby step in facing the bigger problems that are probably going to come down the pipe. So this picture, this image, the idea of people looking at this and going, yeah, that's great. Whereas I kind of go, I'm not so sure it's great. It's intrusive and to me biases things the wrong way, that we should really be thinking about freedom and not locking down licenses. So if anything, my stake in this is just to make people more aware of the possibilities and to not think about doing things like what Snopes did. And even today, to think about not throwing in that attribution, but offering it as an option. So that's the way I look at it. Please feel free to email me or comment on the video or send a pull request or issue to the GitHub. Thanks for watching.